It seems that PR's growth projection is not in the papers in the sense that there's going to be like 5 to 600,000 PRs over the next 7 years. It's not going to be a significant amount. The case, then of course, I think the 5% ABSD is going to likely remain at that. There's not going to be like a lot of risk in terms of, unless like suddenly our government is going to allow a lot more PRs to be taken. Of course, on the ground, what we've heard and understand from a lot of our partners as well as our clients is that it's very hard to apply for a PR right now. It's a long time to get PRs. You'll also be surprised to see that in terms of the direction of nationality, you can see that nationality based on this figure, the amount of Singapore PRs that has bought into properties 1108 from investors from China is actually quite a significant amount. In fact, the total amount right here, this has the largest percentage, 0.1108, followed by Malaysia at 788. And in Q1 2023, basically, you will still see that the majority of transactions are being done by Singaporeans at 3,457 caveats being lodged in Q1 2023, 879 PRs, 310 foreign investors, 26 from companies. In totality, Q1 for condos and apartments 2023 is at 4,672, which usually by the end of the year, that's the normal case, because usually by the end of the year, you're going to see resale transactions hovering at about 10,000, new launches, probably 8 to 10,000. Usually we end up with about 18 to 20,000 in totality. Last year for landed properties, we end up at about 1,008. Averagely, they always do at about 1,600 to 2,000. So that is basically how the transaction volume will evolve. But I think for this round, my personal opinion is the re-acceleration of prices again, that policymakers have to slow it down. If not, in terms of escalation amount, if we were to look at the amount of percentage gain from 2012 to 2023 for landed properties, but of course landed properties are out of picture for this context because this is targeted at condos and apartments. Landed properties are out of reach for foreign buyers unless on Sentosa Cove, but landed properties has grown by 62.4%. And when we look at landed properties over the last 2 years, has grown by 40%. And when we look at non-landed, 2012 to 2023, 75.4%, but just in the last 3 years, 22.4%, which is pretty significant. What this means is that if this continues for another maybe 12% this year, we're going to have a totality of about 35% over the last 4 years when we end 2023. And if this continue to go on with every year with 15%, 15%, 15%, what is going to happen in 5 years' time is that if it accelerates by 75% growth, you compare that back with what we have grown for the last 11 years, from 2012 to 2023, total was 75.4%. But if we allow this speed to happen, that means 3 to 4% per quarter, 15% per year, in 5 years' time, it will be another 75%. So it was 11 years, 75% growth. But if we allow this speed to continue, it will be another 75%. But now this time around, it's not for 11 years, it's going to be for 5 years, half the speed. And that will bring us to 150% growth in about 16 years. 75% in 5 years, 75% in 11 years. If you can see that difference, I think that is where our policymakers is concerned about if this acceleration continues forward. So, end of this episode, I think what is important is that sometimes, of course, when we look at this news, then we will start to think about, hey, then all the more I should wait because I want to wait for price to drop. But to end of this episode and to summarize it for you, will ABSD cause the private property price to drop? My personal forecast as well as opinion is that it might slow down the acceleration, or it might cause a slight stagnation for a period of time for higher quantum condominiums and apartments. Probably $5, $6, $7, $8 million onwards kind of range. But ranges below $5 million, I don't think the impact will be that big because the majority of purchases, 95% are still done by Singaporeans and PR, 77% last year by Singaporean, 18% last year by PRs. Majority of the action is still done locally. Only 5% of the foreigners have purchased into the residential market for 2022. And thus, I think perhaps the higher quantum one will be slightly stagnated, maybe in the CCR portion for very high quantum ones, but ranges maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 6, 7 million, I don't think it will have much of an impact because most of the action are still done locally. So what does this mean? This means that if you can understand statistics on probably a more micro level, then it's easier to make a decision. But end of the day, I think the most bulk of the action will still be done by Singaporeans, and we're already going into a year of almost like a full-on year of 4% interest rate starting from 2022 until today. There's still no deceleration of price. I think prices will still grow on a gradual speed, but I think what our government is looking at is instead of going 3 to 4%, can we just grow maybe at 1 or maybe 1 to 2%? So I think that will be the direction moving forward.